Okay, here we are again, another episode of the Danny and Troy show. And in this exciting episode, we've got the last of the series of creative writing experiment, experience, example that has been, yeah, just, I guess, flowing out of Danny's creative mind onto his paper and laptop and iPad and the adventures of some interesting characters emerging and great insights, like I keep saying as well, that wonderful meanings that are coming through for me. So this is the last of that series, and I'm looking forward to seeing how
it ends.
Yeah, well, what
The
outcomes are here.
interesting thing about the use of the word meaning is, I think that the root word there is mean. Right? So I'll try to be really mean here. Right. Mean also means what? The middle or the average, of which there is none, I understand, right? So, okay, without further blah, 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 I'll tell you as an intro, the land I own across the street over there, I asked my mother before she changed her state to give it a name, and she called it Gateway. And I kept trying to figure out what it meant, you know. There's a picture of my father in one of I got it done in Russia. It has one of these little enamel plates. You can take a photograph and turn it into this enamel plate that you put on a cross or whatever you want. I always like to check mark better than a cross. But anyway, he's sitting there in his army uniform at the gateway. Which I thought was really curious. And when I came across this after I had written the last part of this series, this is only series number 1, right?
Sure.
Troy and I will discuss our future following this video, of which you're not invited to attend, but we'll tell you about it later. And anyway, it's the title I chose to use, and let's see how it goes and see how this crazy little jumping bean reaches its final conclusion, I think.
Right.
But nothing's final.
Sure.
So the title first, Death as a Gateway. I subtitled it No Lusting After Desired Outcomes as sort of a summary statement. And then I put down there, I thought was even more appropriate, Desire and a Good for Nothing Life. And we begin. Surely, Drukpa had never intended to find a back door to Zazen, especially when he now considered this aspect of Buddhism as merely sitting and doing nothing. He was an activist, after all, a doer, not a do-nothinger. It was insulting. How was he going to control all the money in the world by doing nothing? Ridiculous. That whole circus of thoughts he had plunged into, its disturbing affects, its costs to his mental processes, its unsettling nature, the waste. Which mind was he using? Which one was speaking now? How was he to judge the benefits? How embarrassing. If it ever got out. Effective indeed. Was he simply seeking peace of mind through this gateway? Certainly he could have done better. with his critical mind. He was popular. He wasn't seeking a cave to sit in for 3 years, 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 days, 3 hours, 3 minutes, and 3 seconds to find enlightenment. How absurd. Yet the objectives of his mind had scampered around the material world, the immaterial, the theoretical, the antithetical, and even the absurd, even the quantum fields, to see he had done nothing? Really? Had he come to an answer so quickly? Control was a measure of desire. You had to have desire before you could want to control it. This was surely anticlimactic. A limp-wristed, pussy-whipped conclusion that belied his efforts, one that gutted his intentions and his applications with this? Was he to control all the money in the world by dismissing his own desire to do so? Was it an internal battle only? That was the outcome? How disappointing. His great battle, his victory, were part of an illusion? How was he to know? Was being carefree the answer? Not to be sucked into a dog chasing its tail conclusion? Was there ever a conclusion? And what? That's it. As one of my favorite directors in grad school said to me, you know, the climax when you're writing a play in this particular instance should come 27 lines from the bottom of the page.
Okay.
And I think in some ways it has, but I want to defer to you and your impressions first as to whether it was a conclusion, or if there ever was a conclusion. Yeah. And then his most favorite saying was, and what?
Well, yeah, I think
short and sweet.
yeah,
That's what it was.
it's
Short
and sweet. It's you know, any ending is an ending, but yeah, that ending seemed to be saying that there is no ending, or which is, yeah, you're saying, for me it's like, in order to achieve, you have to, well, you were saying desire and control and money, these are the words that were coming out. So in order to control desire, you have to have a desire first, and then, but in order to control that desire, you have to not desire in some ways, so do nothing. And then and then piecing it back to controlling the money, so control, desire, money can be interchanged. Desire, in order to control money, you need to firstly have money, but then not have money, or that, when it comes to my mind, is a conceptual aspect of, okay, value exchange. Money, I mean, in its first concept of it was actually, you know, real value. I mean, you could, if it was a gold coin, that gold could be, I mean, it's pretty to look at to start with, but it could be molded into a plate or a knife and fork, or, you know, it had some sort of tangible value. But then with the replacement of printed money, you know, that's gone, and now we got cryptocurrency, which is another level up. This abstract aspect of of money is coming more and more apparent, and going back to the root aspects of value exchange. Yeah, is this what's coming to me? Is that, you know, we want to be able to control the aspects of value exchange. Not maybe want to is the wrong words to throw into that sentence, but the meaning that's coming out for me is around, yeah, like Zazen aspects of doing nothing in order to control something. I don't know if I'm making sense, but
you're let me see if I can help out, because you're helping me.
sure.
Because while you were making sense out of it, if it's possible for yourselves, I think that maybe the message, and this is rather confusing for me as well. How do you control all the money in the world except by controlling yourself?
Sure.
Because if you don't conceive of mind or money, then it doesn't exist, because going into nothingness actually dispenses with the need or desire to control it.
Sure.
So by controlling that, you actually obliterated the objective by dismissing the desire to control it. So rather than, you know, a frontal attack, this is kind of like, you know, hybrid warfare or whatever, is that in some sense, you know, we're directing our energy, we're concentrating and formulating and objectifying something which, to at least to my mind, turns it into, well, by the English language, the object of my desire. So the desire to control all the money in the world becomes my objective, right? But becomes is the word I used, can also be changed. The verb can be changed, right? Meaning that if I decide that it's not becoming to me or my desire, by reaching a conclusion that dismisses the desire, that in effect, that object of my desire is dismissed in my mind. So for me, at least, I have controlled all the money in the world by dismissing it.
Sure.
Right? I don't mean that as a cop-out, principally because as things are as weird as they can get, what is it they say, truth is stranger than fiction, is that when I had made that conclusion, then I don't think, like my, what was it, fourth grade teacher said, there's no such thing as an accident. I ran across this YouTube video called "Meditation is Good for Nothing." So I had realized, maybe perhaps through this writing, I had been meditating out loud.
Sure.
Right? Catching all of the birds and butterflies and insects or whatever that was buzzing around in my head. And if the objective of quietening, making them quiet, was the object of my desire, because in possession of everything I would have control, right? So it becomes a conceptual thing suddenly. From meditation is good for nothing by Zen master Shohaku Okumura. And you can find him on YouTube at the Intellectual Wave, as in our logo, right? Which also, you have the octopus riding the wave. You've got it in a circular fashion, right? So it does resemble zero, which has been part of our discussion, ongoing discussion since we began after our research on zero, Fibonacci, just everything Sumeria, everything you can think about, which concluded, I would like to think would be the result, symbolic result of our search. And when I stumbled across this, and this Buddhist monk who actually, he and a couple of others had bought a piece of property in Western Massachusetts and started a place where they could, they weren't after profit. That was the thing that impressed me. They weren't there, as in most approaches I've seen in the West, to make a killing, right? To get rich or whatever as their objective, but their objective was sit and do nothing. Apparently, and I'm reading into this, where doing nothing would actually lead you to the answer without having a desire to find an answer, because as in Drukpa, he cannot dismiss his desire. He runs the full gamut, at least to his capability, and in some attempt to maintain some people's attention, that it ends up, he was like a dog chasing its tail, right? Or the dragon or the snake swallowing its tail. Maybe that's even more apropos. But it came as a big surprise to me that this could go on forever. No matter how weird, no matter how, deep or how crazy it got, he would continue chasing his tail.
Sure.
Trying to find out, and we bumped into the perimeter a couple of times as to how you go about this, and what's the way out, and reread it or never re-listen to it, and then that, which would kind of be interesting, having reached that conclusion, I should probably go back and tweak the whole thing. Wow. And then it becomes like a bubble.
Yeah.
So
right.
And then the whole thing disappears in the activity of a mind in search of an answer based on a person's desire. But I think in this Eastern way of thinking, that you can't have enlightenment without desire. So I understand, at least that was, from what I understand, Buddha's approach, right?
Right.
Is to conquer desire. Why? Because you have it. And if you don't have desire and you sit and do nothing, without trying to clear your mind or anything, which you could pin it onto my desire to quieten my mind. I mean, this thing can go on forever, obviously.
Yeah.
When we get to the place, which I think is also the objective of Buddhism, which is to clear your mind of all chatter. When this Zen master is saying, when I hear a bird tweet, right, or a bell ring, I don't hear it. It's, to paraphrase it, we all hear it, right? It's not just me listening and determining that it is a bird singing, and to take a bird singing and replace it with my desire to control all the money in the world, isn't that the same thing? In that, as things change around me, I could be chasing them forever. Because what I just added to the conclusion here is there ever a conclusion? And my thoughts then, I think I jotted it down. Oh, great. They take me back up to the top every time. Is, was there ever a conclusion without a beginning? Which seems more apropos than and what? Because it is an and what question anyway.
Well, I love that analogy. I mean, what's coming to my mind is you mentioned chasing your tail, and then you mentioned swallowing your tail. So you see a snake chasing its tail and then actually catching its tail and then slowly swallowing it until it's actually disappears. Boom, it's just ate itself. And I mean, I see a lot of analogies, or just to, I mean, we talked about a long time ago in this, our Danny and Troy show, the beginning of life and the primordial ooze and what's going on there, the single-celled organisms. So how one single-celled organism engulfed another one.
So right.
That's kind of sparked off that, yeah, eukaryotic cell systems that formed life today. And then, if you take it outside of that context, then you see big animals eating smaller. Start with fish, I guess. Big fish eats a little fish, and then that smaller fish going into the bigger fish and being energy, or some sort of substance, or giving life to that bigger fish. And then fast track it to where we are today. I see what's going on, or perhaps what possibly could be going on, is there's something that's bigger than me or my brain and what's going on with my biological organism. But that bigger fish is, to give it a name, consciousness. And this kind of consciousness outside of my own individual self is saying, hey, I'm here, and it's kind of engulfing me and surrounding me. And yeah, that bigger me, is what we are referring to when we talk about nothingness, emptiness, oneness, all these concepts that have come through, ancient and fundamental religions and wisdoms of hundreds of thousands of years. But what I think, it doesn't stop there. There's actually, perhaps when we get there, there's even a bigger, I don't know what we give it now, super consciousness that's going to engulf that one. So it's like a never-ending, infinite cycle of one thing engulfing another, and I don't know, maybe it is related to the Big Bang and how we all started from that theory, and the expansion of the universe and things like that. But for now, yeah, I see it as us being here. Yes, this thing is going on, this infinite cyclic process of one thing engulfing another. And like you said, and what? It doesn't matter. It's not going to really cause any difference. It's just something that, yeah, we can talk about and say, what do you think? Oh yeah, what I think that. So yeah, that's interesting. But get on with our lives. Like that one of the titles of the previous pieces was do the hokey pokey. So we just continue, putting our right hand in, take it out, turn around, now the left hand, then your foot, then your whole body, and it just keeps going around and around. And that's kind of what I'm getting from not just your last conclusion piece here, but the lead up to it as well.
I feel like a chorus, not the lead singer, but just the chorus, right? Okay, time to say, shake it all about, whatever. But it's really very interesting that, of course, we're looking at things from a very primal point of view, right?
Cool.
And I think that we believe that we're so superior and so advanced and all this other stuff, and then we seem to be just chewing on an earlier thought. We take everything so seriously. It's got to be this, it's got to be that, whether it's mathematics or whatever. This stuff, according to my beliefs, was given to us, whether it was the Anunnaki or something. We didn't come up with it. It was like throwing a dog biscuit to your pet.
Okay.
right? So chew on that one, and when that's digested and comes out the other end, we'll throw you another one, right? And yeah, okay, some portion of the nutrients, if there are any, in the dog biscuit make it into the dog's body, but it's going to take it, a trillion years before it can stand upright and, and throw a baseball or whatever dogs will do in a trillion years. And it's all just some kind of, I call it mental exegesis, it's just exercising the mind. But who's to say that we are acting on a thought that goes anywhere other than, you reach its conclusion, the dog biscuit reaches the stomach, and it no longer has the form of a dog biscuit. First of all, it got chewed up, right?
Sure.
Into little bits and pieces, then it gets some slush inside of a furry little animal. And then, I understand that 90 or 80% of the nutritional value of that dog biscuit doesn't get used. And it, goes to feed fungi and flies and God knows whatever else. Where are we along that consumption chain, right? And what is the greater purpose? It's almost like what this Zen master was saying is like, and what? Right? Okay, so, I've spoken about this before also. It's sort of like whatever is going to happen is going to happen. This is my approach. And we often interject ourselves into situations to feel like we're having an effect. Right? So maybe the dog is barking, but I don't know whether that's having any effect on its digestion or not. Okay. So it's all just some sort of game or something, which is the idea I got from Zazen. It's like, why bother? And if you watch that video, and get what I got, was that he said his family left. He didn't say which one, Nagasaki or what was the other one? Atom bomb. Hiroshima. Was that after the United States did Japan a real favor, they moved out into the country, and his father said to him, "You're the oldest son, and traditionally speaking, you are responsible for the assets that we have." And the master said, "We don't have any." It was like, "Oh yeah, so I can do what I want to do." And he was like, "Yep, so." And then he turned into, a student of Zazen after a while, right? And that was his conclusion. Otherwise, he would have been possibly seeking to control all the money in Japan. And then, once you got that done, okay, so then you're some bigwig in Oklahoma City or God knows where, and for what? Right? You're just juggling grasshoppers is what I feel like you're doing, right? Right. Okay. That was the story of your life, and who's going to remember you and for what? Having been the richest man in the world for what, 10 minutes? Or is it 15? But it all came to the point, when it came to me, the point was nothing. Sure. So you do all of that and what? Well, there'll be some yahoo who down the street is going to reinvent money, or which is what we're doing now, right? The whole idea. Sure. And then money is an exchange of value. Maybe it would be better in chapter 2 to control all the value in the world. And that would mean, to pronounce what is value, what has value, and what the exchange rate is. Because, before money, I only presume people did what they want to do, which is what the master, Zen master here, is talking about. That he had to go through all these different obstacles. His were actual, mine were imaginary, right? That every incident of thought affected Drukpa to the point of really trying to understand what's it all about. Right? And one thing led to another, and so on and so on. So who knows if he were to reach a conclusion, what that conclusion, no, I'm sorry, I even stated it incorrectly. If a conclusion was reached, what did that, without his desire, which would be, I think, sitting and being quiet and, and nothingness, where that would put him. Especially in Massachusetts, you got Boston on one side, you got him in the woods on the other side. And I kept thinking, everybody wants something. And these guys, well, I think the only thing that they wanted was sustenance, food, water, place to sleep, food, clothing, and shelter, right? That's what I learned as a kid.
Right.
Then they started adding on to it, other items became Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. So now we need all that other stuff. And for what? It's all temporary.
That's right.
It comes and it goes.
Yeah. I think, drawing upon past episodes as well, we mentioned fate and destiny. And I believe we're all fated to die. If you're born, there's only one thing that's certain in your life, is that, eventually it will end. So in between, we have these adventures, these, life experiences, and that will be destined, or your destiny. But as we were discussing, and as I believe, your life actions can actually impact your destiny. So what actions you take while you're alive will have an influence on the destiny that you experience.
I would say, I've never been an apostle of anything. And maybe that's, what made my life of value to me.
Okay.
I never wanted to be a movie star, and at the moment when it was being dangled in front of me, I decided, make it sound like I actually had a choice. I went with the flow.
Sure.
I had already moved to the East Coast. I was on my way to Russia. I had a dissertation to write, and it was like a thirsty man drinking a cup of water.
Okay.
I didn't really have any intention in mind, of rehabilitating the economy and culture of Russia, or anything that came after all that. Of course, I had an active life before that, but now somebody has thrown, a wrench into the works with this thought of, have I reached an end, or where do I go from here? I wanted something. I wanted a dramatic conclusion, and without wanting it, it came to me, rather abruptly, as at least for me, as the translator or the scribe of what this information was, principally said, well, if I have to write it down, there's no, after that thought, there was nowhere to go. I feel like, I fell off the canyon edge.
Okay. Right.
So, anyway, that's what we have.
Yeah.
I wanted to say, I wrote a note again while you're talking. While you're talking, I'm writing notes. And then I actually meant it as, not to correct, but to say my point of view was that death is not an end.
Right.
I just don't get it. Maybe I'll be proved wrong upon my own death, but I just think it's just a bad use of language.
Right.
That we could change things, the way we talk. because before we do anything, we think. And then if I wasn't thinking about this, and I wasn't, and then it came as an exercise in creative expression, in some ways, it's no different than, you know, crying for a dream, which I did in Sedona, I guess it was Sedona, sitting on top of a mountain waiting, you know, send me a message or whatever. And I interpreted the message. However, I do believe that in that time, I spent a lot of time crying for a dream. And then after, you know, not drinking and sitting in the sun all day and watching the moon creep across the sky, it just came to me, this little bird, right? And it was like this canyon wren. And I had wanted, you know, the eagles to my left to drop me a feather, and then years later, you know, it was sort of like, well, you ride through the heavens as a canyon wren on the backs of eagles, which was told me by, you know, a lady who ran, California girl, who ran a gas station as I was sitting there and just chatting about things. And she said, you know that Indian legend? It was like, it came to me, right? And without expecting it, I didn't know it existed. Sure. And it came to me at the moment that it came to me. Whether I'm sitting in a desert or whether, you know, I'm in CERN, Switzerland, you know, watching atomic particles bounce around. You got to get lost in that stuff, you know, and so confused or whatever that some subconscious force or some exterior force comes and says, hey, you know, right? Sit and do nothing.
Right.
And because it's kind of like watching a baseball game in your head, right?
Okay.
And it's like, is that helpful? I mean, what's the purpose of watching a baseball game? I don't even like baseball. It's too, you know, it's too worked out. Too many rules, you know. Well, you got to do this, and you know, this is a fly, and it's like you're complicating things. I want to see people battling it out.
Right.
I want to say, oh, you broke rule number 236, and for that, the other one gets a kick.
Yeah.
Really? Sounds like a special military operation or something. So I guess I'm kind of adjusting to the idea that overcoming desire, right, would be the first thing of like opening the gates and letting it play. And then whatever comes, because I don't trust my mind or anybody else's mind enough to believe that the way we see things is necessarily the way they're going to be.
Yeah. So this whole words with nothing and something. So I see like the difference between, and bringing in desire as a word as well. So we can't, like, I watched a bit of that YouTube that you sent about Zazen, and he was saying, even desiring nothing is a desire. So you can't desire nothing, but you can not desire anything. So I think this helps me anyway, the way I put it in my mind, to not desire anything. Nothing will come, possibly, perhaps, but you cannot desire to have nothing. You just have to stop desiring for anything. And then
what you've described, I see as this quantum theory, right? Is it a wave or a particle?
Okay.
And they've got two little slits in front of you, right? And then they're shooting electrons or whatever they're shooting through, and then it shows up everywhere. I mean, you could try to narrow it down, but what you're not seeing is the most important thing. What you
Okay.
do see is what you can see, what you will see,
Right.
but
Great.
you don't even know, what's happening
Great.
behind that wall,
Sure.
or suddenly is it a wave or a particle? It's not an either or, it's a both.
Yep.
It's a wave and a particle. And then we go on to something else, right?
Right.
So why
Yeah.
is that? And then we can go on forever
Mm-hmm.
based on the foundation of our language and the meaning of words. But if you stop thinking through a slit, then the larger forces of everything around you has the chance to speak.
Sure.
Oh wait, I haven't finished yet. And it's like, shut up. That's what the universe is trying to say.
Right.
Will you just shut up?
Perfect.
Jeez. Okay. I'll shut up.
Well, that might be a good spot to end this session.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
We'll let you know, folks,
Yeah.
when something else comes to mind. But we've explored some of the, by firsthand observation, what someone, and could be anyone, could be you, about what happens to a person who has this objective, who has this desire. And I was surprised by the ending too, which, I have to admit and confess that I want to say I didn't think of it. That maybe that itself is a sign that in not thinking, I can reach my goal as well.
Perfect. Yeah.
And so much for Descartes, right? I think, therefore I am. All right. Well, all right. Thanks a lot. We're going to back up now and let the other person speak. What was it in Latin? Sum. Or whatever. Somebody can look it up. I know it as well as I may.
I don't know.
I think, therefore I am.
Right. Yeah, I know that part, but you want me to look it up in Latin?
Sure, why not? We can't conclude with a loose end, God forbid. Cool.
It's cogito ergo sum.
What is it? Oh, cogito. Cogito ergo sum. Sum. I cogito to cogitate, to
right.
think.
Right.
Ergo, therefore, sum. That's what you have. Sum.
Wonderful. I think, therefore I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. That could be another whole episode, the topic of our next one.
But the next one would have to be no cogito ergo
That's right.
sum.
I think that's what you're leading to. It's like it's not thinking, it's the not thinking that matters, or it's not what you see. What actually is more important is what you don't see. Coming to the realization that there are things that you don't see is one of the first steps.
And I understand that Robert Plant, the guitarist with the Rolling Stones, principally said, I don't write any of this. I just write it down. Sure. Somebody else gives it to him. And I feel that way too. I'm not alone. At least I know, some people think that way. I'm not the creator. I'm just the scribe, right?
Sure.
Would like to meet that Anunnaki fellow one day. Okay, let's end it, Troy.
Okay. Okay. Great. Yep.
Usher us out, please.
All right. That's been a great experience for me. Great insights. Great. What we said, experiment and example of creative writing, and it's captured in time now for all those that are able to access this YouTube series and take from it what comes. So thank you, Danny. It's
You're
been
welcome. Thank you,
great,
Troy.
great piece putting it together, all the whole series. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.